long she waited. I said I loved your shirt, but behind your back I said I hate it. May lightning strike me down if I lied, may no one be around when my tongue's untied. Everybody says it's okay, all the little things I say with my big fat mouth. La 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 la. My big fat mouth.
My big fat mouth gets me in trouble.
You have a big fat mouth. Oh, everybody's watching. Okay. Yeah, those things are a real pain, by the way. They were like clicking last night at house. Hey, guys, welcome today. Excuse me. I just want to thank you for being here because you know one of the things that can happen is you cannot be here and you're going to miss the incredible message that I believe can speak to a lot of us in a very personal way. There's enormous power in my big fat mouth. Everyone say this with me. I want you to say the whole thing. My big fat mouth. You ready? My big fat mouth. Doesn't that sound good just to say that? It's really good. Now, say it one more time. My big fat mouth. A lot of times we like to talk about his big fat mouth or her big fat mouth, but we don't talk about our big fat mouth. Now, Jesus has something to say about this. Let's take a look in Luke 6. He says, a good person brings good out of treasure of good things in his heart. A bad person brings bad out of his treasure of bad things. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. The mouth will speak what's inside of the heart. So if you have it inside of you already, your mouth will speak. So our big fat mouth has to be fixed, but it's by us fixing our lives. Would you guys agree this morning? So we're going to talk about words that we can speak, that we can say them right. Not say words wrong, but say words right. So in the upcoming weeks, we're going to talk about the problem of lying. We're going to talk about criticizing. And guess what? We're going to talk about gossiping. Because those are some of the things that we do with our big fat mouth. To introduce today's theme, what I really want to do is I want to show you some photos. I actually had hair. I had hair. It was long. It was white. In fact, if you look at the one picture with all the trees behind us there, you can actually see we all almost had the same color hair, except Cameo. She was going a little darker on us at that point already. But, I mean, this was an amazing trip. We had never experienced anything other than a camping trip until this point in our lives. It was the most amazing thing. Now, if you look at these images, you can tell that it was amazing. Now, let me tell you the real story behind these pictures. It was not only our first big family vacation, we decided to spend the money. Mary Lou had this dream of going to Walt Disney, but she didn't want to just go to Walt Disneyland. She wanted to go to the world. She wanted to take everything in. And so we were going to give the kids a real magical experience. Mary Lou had every hour planned. She had it planned from day 1 to day 14. She had every single minute planned. She knew the buses we'd take. She knew how long we would be in a park. She knew what time we would be taking supper. She knew what time we're getting on rides. Well, maybe not quite, but it sure felt like that. But the first day, we almost messed it up. We almost messed it up. And we almost missed our bus because we messed up on the times that the buses were picking us up. We didn't plan our breakfast time right. We almost missed everything, but nobody cussed. Nobody cussed. It was a bit of a panic zone, but we still made it. It was probably the fastest breakfast we've ever experienced before. So you see the picture of us all smiling. Let's take a look again. You can see us, we're all smiling. But one of my kids who will remain nameless, you don't know who it was, but it was one of them. And I will never tell who it is. But these were the words from their mouth, and I can remember it like night and day, and I'll explain to you why. They said, how long do we have to be here? This is so boring. I don't even like this park. That was the last thing that any one of the kids would say before Mary Lou got a hold of them. Now, she didn't raise her voice. She just simply looked at him and say, you are going to love this park. In fact, you're going to love everything we do. You're going to love your drinks. You're going to love your food. And you're even going to love to stand in line. Or you will be going back home to Canada. Now let's go in and get our rain jackets. Oh, complain. And we thought, why did we spend all this money? You know, it's just like nothing was right. You know, you blame one kid for complaining and the other kid saying, well, I wasn't complaining. You know, so they're complaining that we're complaining about them complaining. It was really, that's why the subject today is complaining. So we're going to talk about this. I think when I look in the scriptures, I look at God's chosen people, the Israelites. When I look at a people who complain a lot, they were captive as slaves and they complained. God did miracles for them and they complained. 10 different miraculous miracles to really soften the heart of Pharaoh so that he would let the Israelites go. He drowned Pharaoh's army for them. He gave them bread from heaven. He got water from rocks. Get this, their clothes never wore out. But they still did what? Complain. And I really find it comical how the Israelites reminded me a lot of that magical experience I had in Disneyland. It felt the same. I did all these good things, but they still complained. It was interesting because we were talking about complaining, and on the way here this morning, I was complaining. I was complaining about we're running late. I was complaining because Mary Lou slept in. I was complaining because she woke me up last night. I was complaining. I actually think I counted 7 times in 5 minutes. Just this morning. Now, what you guys a bunch of like perfect angels? You didn't complain this morning? Okay, put your hand up if you complained this morning already. Right? I think we all got it. We all have complained. We do this constantly. Let's look at the book of Exodus in the 14th chapter. Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? They're complaining. They said, listen to their words. We were so happy when we were slaves. What? They were happy when they were slaves, they said. Now they say, but now you brought us out of there. Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? Sure, be a slave, get beat. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Now that sounds like so many of us, that we look back after something's happened and we complain again. And like so many of us, to add insult to injury, Moses said something that I believe was very interesting. It's a powerful moment of silence I think you could get from it when he says, listen, your complaining, your grumbling is not against us. It's against God. When you complain, you're complaining against God. You're not complaining against us who are leading you. You're complaining against the Lord. Imagine every time you complain that it's not about our circumstances or it's not about the traffic, but what if God's eyes were actually looking at us and he's feeling that we're complaining about him? We're complaining about the very life that we have in this moment and in this day. So what I want to do is I kind of just want to help personalize this today so that you're going to actually hear this message through the lens of your own complaining. Everyone say, my own complaining. Complaining. You guys got it. So I want to ask you, what do you complain about the most? What are you complaining about the most? I want you to be really honest. What is it that you complain about the most? I know what it is for me. It's my schedule. I'm always complaining that I have to get here and to here and to here, and I don't have enough time. I got this meeting, I got that meeting. I got to go and do this, I got to do that. It's my schedule. I'm constantly complaining. I am about to challenge you guys today to my big fat mouth challenge. That you are going to shut your big fat mouth in complaining and in gossiping and in lying and in criticizing. It's a 30-day challenge that I challenge you to take each day and be proud and celebrate every half day, every hour, every 2 days, every week. But it's my schedule, Oh, poor Evan. Well, the truth is I feel like it's poor me. Because it's frustrating when you don't feel like anybody else understands. Or even if they do, nothing ever changes. Maybe it's that you complain that money's too tight. Maybe you complain because, you're not married, and then you get married, and then you complain about your husband, or you complain about your wife. You just complain. Maybe, your boss drives you crazy, so you have to complain about the boss. Your meetings at work, they're so boring. They're just so boring. You complain the weather's too bad. You complain your Wi-Fi is too slow. There's nothing to watch on TV. No, you're right. 350 channels. There's nothing to watch on TV. Nothing at all. But I want to clarify this to hope that you'll understand. The problem is not the weather. The problem is not the traffic. The problem is not Netflix has not come out with some original content that you have an approval rating that you're happy with. It's nothing like that. What's happened is we've taken our eyes off the goodness of God and we centered them on ourselves. And when we take our eyes off the goodness of God, we look at ourselves differently. We make ourselves the God of our universe. And so essentially, we take on a God complex. And the problem is we can't change anything. Complaining has never changed anything. And I'm as guilty as anyone else when it comes to complaining. The problem leads to the curse of complaining. And I call it a curse because it's constant. So we're going to look at a text today that I think is mind-blowingly powerful by the Apostle Paul. The top thing on his bucket list, I want you to think about Apostle Paul. He has this bucket list, and his big desire in his heart is that he wants to go preach in Rome. He wants to be a preacher in Rome and share. He wants to reach their leaders and impact the world right from Rome. He has a plan in place. Instead, he's arrested, thrown into a Roman prison. His dream is a preacher, but his life is a prisoner. His dream is a preacher, but his life is now a preacher. He's locked up for, they assume, around 2 years, 24 hours a day, chained to Roman guards, and possibly waiting an execution that he doesn't know if he will have or he won't have. And I'll be honest, if you put me in Paul's place, I'm going to complain to God. I'm going to say, God, this is not fair. Why are you allowing this? I have come out of my way to do what you've told me to do. And why would you do this to me? I would complain. But Paul's different. Paul's been shipwrecked. Paul's been beaten. He's been snake bitten. He's been left for dead. And he still chooses to not complain. Now let's listen to what he says in Philippians 2. In the 14th verse, do everything without complaining. Everyone read that with me. Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may be innocent and pure as God's perfect children, who live in a world of corrupt and sinful people. You must shine among them like stars lighting up the sky, as you offer them the message of life. And if you do so, I shall have reason to be proud of you on the day of Christ, because it will show that all my effort and work has not been wasted. Perhaps my life's blood is to be poured out like an offering on the sacrifice that your faith offers to God. If that is so, I am glad, and I share my joy with you all. And in the same way, you too must be glad and share your joy with me. I want to take you back in just a moment. And we're right looking here when it says, so that you may be innocent and pure and perfect. When you complain, you take away the perfection, you take away the innocence, and you take away the purity, because you contaminate. When we complain, we contaminate. He says, you who will live in a world of corrupt and sinful people, it says you must shine among them. Because if we are to be the light and the salt, we must shine. And that means we need to stay away from the corruption. And we need to look at complaining like we look at the 10 Commandments. We need to look and say, complaining will wreck our lives. It's a high standard. I want to share a little bit. I'm not sure if you've heard of a doctor named Dr. Travis Bradberry. How many people have ever heard of a book called Emotional Intelligence 2? Well, Dr. Travis Bradberry wrote this book. He did research on the idea of negativity, complaining. And what he says is this. You guys ready? Repeated complaining hardwires the brain to do what? Complain. Repeated negativity hardwires the brain to be negative. It's a hard wiring when you do it over and over. In other words, the more complaining, the more likely that your brain is going to be triggered to continue to complain. And it's called confirmation bias. So no matter what anyone says to you, it won't matter because your brain has been hardwired in such a way. And we all fall guilty to that. The first thing in your heads probably right now is like, I know someone like that. But we need to get away from someone else, and we need to examine ourselves today. In other words, you expect something to be bad. You know, you might have walked in today and you might have just chosen that, I don't like somebody. You had that in your mind. It doesn't matter what they did for you today, you'd feel the same way. Because your mind had a preconceived idea, and you confirmed it by saying it over and over. People say, all men are losers. All men are jerks. Well, that's because that's what you believed and you've told yourself, and you've hardwired your brain to function in such a way. And unfortunately, there's some wonderful men out there. And I want to take you back just quickly to the Israelites. They complained when they were in Egypt, right? Then they complained when they got out of Egypt. Why? Because they had confirmation bias. They were negative in there. They complained. And now that they're free, they're complaining. They will not stop complaining, and the only way it changed is when the next generation got away from the complaining, and now they can move forward. You live a life that's preconceived of the bad. Philippians 4:8 says, fill your minds with those things that are good and that deserve praise. The things that are good and that deserve praise. That's what we should be filling our minds with. Things that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and honorable. So for our first point today, I'm actually going to call Luke Tait up. Give him a hand. He's going to share our next point here today.
Whoever, yes. All right. Well, I'm not going to complain about the sound text today, but maybe later. I'm kidding, of course. All right. Our first point today is if you can change your circumstance, then do something about it. Man, that sounds simple, eh? But there's more to it if we dive past the simplistic view. If you are in a situation that you dislike, if you are in a circumstance that you even hate, if you feel helpless and hopeless, then do something about it. If you have the ability to change what you are going through, then why not do it? Why don't we do it? We get lazy. We get apathetic. We don't want to move. We would rather complain. There's a great example in the Bible about this. It's a story that we often draw on, that Pastor Evan loves to share, and that's the story of Nehemiah. Now, this guy, his hometown of Jerusalem was completely defenseless. No walls. Ruined. Like Darth Vader, Death Star, destroyed, ruined. It was gone. If someone attacked, the Israelites truly would be destroyed. And when Nehemiah saw this, he could have complained. Oh, why doesn't someone else build the wall? Oh, we're going to get attacked and all die. On whatever Israelite social media of the day was, it would have been called the tablet, I'm sure. Instead of just whining and complaining about a very big problem, he took it upon himself to change it. He changed not only his circumstance, but also thousands of people around him. One person can do it. He changed his circumstance. He moved. He saw. He became energetic. He didn't wait. He did it. Let's draw it back to something a little more present day. In my own life, we had a big circumstantial problem, and that was our finances. For the longest time, we were complaining about it because we were in a really bad situation. We were more than half of our annual income in debt. That's a lot. That's a lot of money, especially to us. We were overwhelmed by credit card debt. We were completely maxed out on all of them. Not only that, but we also bottomed out our overdraft, which we raised twice. Every paycheck, we had not a nickel to spare, and it was exhausting. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. We were really struggling. And when we talked about it to other people, they normalized it. Debt is normal. Debt is healthy even. This is what everyone goes through, and therefore it's okay. So for years, all we did was just complain about it. It's one of the number one complaints we have in our daily lives. Statistics show that it is work, co-workers, and money. Those are the three things people complain the most about. Oddly enough, despite our years of constant complaining, I work outside all day in the cold for money I can't even keep. It did nothing for our circumstance. Nothing. So after 4 years of marriage, this is almost 1 year ago, instead of just continuing to complain about our current situation and how much we hated it and how much it was driving us apart, we decided to change. We got energetic. We decided to actually do something this time. So we joined Financial Peace University, which is a course taught by Dave Ramsey, and it was hosted by our very own Brad and Roxanne. It blew our minds. Holy smokes, it gave us hope. We were taught that debt isn't normal. You don't have to live with this. There's actually hope financially for everyone, no matter where you start or how low you think your pit is. So that was almost 1 year ago, not even a year, and Davina and I are almost completely debt-free. All because we decided to change. We had mentors, we had the Bible, and we had this course, and it changed everything for us. All because we decided to get off our butts, stop complaining, and actually do something. It's powerful. It really, really is. So if you hate the circumstance that you are in, and you can't stand the situation that you feel you can never get out of, do something. It sounds simple, but it really is more powerful than you think. So if you feel helpless and hopeless, you can't change anything, you're going to be stuck here forever, you feel like you can never get out of the shadow you're living in, we've been there. You have the God-given ability and talent to get out of your situation. You really do. And if you feel like you don't, you probably still can. You are more powerful than you think. We have someone bigger on our side. So get energetic. And once you feel that moment of procrastination kick in, once you feel that laziness saying, hey, we can't do it, we'll just wait for something to happen to us, get hyper-aggressive. Do something. You can change your circumstance. So bring your A game and just kill it. Really, just do it.
So what Luke's talking about is so incredibly true. Change your circumstances. But you're here sitting right now and you're saying, I cannot change my circumstances. I cannot change my circumstances. Well, if you can't change your circumstances, you ready for your second point? Change your perspective. Sometimes there are situations in your life you can't change your circumstance, but you absolutely can change your perspective. And when you change your perspective, life begins to change. See, my big fat mouth says things and thinks things, and so they're all intertwined together, and they mess up my life on a constant basis. If you can do something, do something. If you can't, change your perspective. Change how you think about it. Now, I want to take you back to Paul. He's chained to a Roman soldier. If imagine, he's in jail, chained to this Roman soldier. He's awaiting his possible execution. His dream's to preach the gospel, but he's locked up as a prisoner. So he went from a messenger to a prisoner. His act of spiritual worship, and I want you guys to catch this. Some people believe that their act of spiritual worship is in giving of their finances. It's in lifting of their hands. Worship, though, is an every single day offering of your life, whatever and wherever you are. And he did an act of worship unto God, even chained up in a Roman prison. Imagine, how could you not complain? Paul's chained up 24 hours a day, different guard every 8 hours, over and over, and he's not complaining. He just changes his perspective. Could you imagine Paul, though? This is what I believe Paul was saying in his act of worship. You think that I'm a prisoner here? Let me tell you who the real prisoner is. 8 hours, I get fresh meat. Virgin ears, I get someone new. The guards, they're chained up to me side by side. And I get to write an 8-hour sermon and preach it new every single day. He took a different perspective. So he still was the messenger while he was the prisoner. He changed his perspective. Could you change your perspective? My question is, what are you chained up to? And some of us, we need to take a new look. We need to step back and take a different perspective from a different angle. We need to ask new people in our lives to be able to share. God still had an assignment for him. So while chained to that Roman soldier, he still made a decision. What are you chained to today? What are the things that you're chained to that you constantly complain about? What are the things that you're saying? All you have to do is listen to the same thing that you complain about over and over, and chances are you've already said it today. If you didn't say it today, you said it last night. And it'll come back and come back. What are you chained to? And don't say my husband. Some of us, it's painful relationships. You know, some of us, it's a job that feels like it's absolutely going nowhere. Some people, like Luke was talking about, could be chained to a financial problem. A financial problem that just feels so overwhelming. And you know, you could be in the middle of that hole and you don't know how you're going to get out. Maybe you're chained to a health issue. The list can be endless of what we're actually chained to in our life. But if you can do something about it, do something. But if you can't change your circumstance, change your perspective. You guys, if you can pray, then you need to pray. If you can work harder, then work harder. If you can get counseling, then get counseling. If you can seek help, then seek help. If you can get wisdom, get wisdom. But you got to do something about it now. And doing something about it is not always changing the circumstances. Doing something is changing your perspective. Change the way you look at it, the way you think about it, and change the words you speak about it. The words we speak. I'm going to unpack this kind of from a personal perspective. My mom and I were discussing this past week, and I was saying, Mom, you know, I was kind of thinking through this, and I know there's lots of things in our life, but do you know a family that we grew up with that kind of went through everything, and it just seemed like they always had the right perspective? And then she brought me back to a family that I knew when I was quite young. They lived out in BC, had a trucking business, built their own place, wonderful family, had a few kids, but in their life wasn't easy. But when a truck went down, they crashed it. He'd worry about the people, not worry about the price. When their son died in a car accident, their perspective was still the same. They still saw the goodness of God. When she had a baby, and it would be stillborn, she still had to carry it full term. She kept her perspective. And I'm telling you, I do not recall a time when I was young that they never had God's perspective. And I know when we were going through a tough time many, many years ago, and I kind of felt like I was at the end of my rope. It took a different perspective by someone challenging me in my life to think different about myself, to believe in who I am and what God created me to be. I had to change that perspective. My question is, what perspective do you need to change today? Life can be difficult, but you got to choose to look at what's right. And are you prepared to do that? Let's pray. Father, I pray today as we face significant trials, when it's so easy to complain about the big stuff or even the little stuff, God, I pray that if we could do something about it, God, Lord, I pray that we would. Give us, God, the power to change our perspective. Help us and give us the strength to see things differently than we've seen them before. Help us, Father. Teach us, God. God, we need to pray for one another. We need you to work in our life in each and every moment. Help us, God, that even when we're tempted to complain, that you're going to give us a pause moment. And that instead of focusing on what is not right about our lives, that we'll focus on what's really right about you. God, help us to remember the great truth that we are not the center of the story. That Jesus, you are always the center of the story. Help us with our big fat mouth, that the words that we say would reflect the character and the goodness of you and not us. May we build up with our words the people around us and not tear people down. Help us stop complaining and start praising, God. You know, as we're just praying still right now, the truth is if we sat down over a cup of coffee, we just kind of talk for a while, I'm sure most of you would admit that we've done things that are wrong and things that are just really, really embarrassing and things that we feel shame. And even now you may be seeing, how does God deal with me? I feel like I repeat the cycles just like those Israelites, where they keep trying to go through the same piece. But my encouragement for you today is let's not go through this test again. Let's find a way to end this, to change this, so that we quit circling the same thing, quit complaining about the same thing, and let's focus on Him and what's right and what He's doing in our lives, and not on what our problems are. Because focusing on our problems will never change a thing. God, help us with our mouths, that we would say things that are honoring. Not just honoring to you, Lord, but honoring to each other. That we would be able to truly, God, reflect you and reflect your character in our life. We thank you, Jesus. Amen.